Tonight, blame China.
No country poses a broader, more severe intelligence collection threat than China.
The U.S. and its allies point the finger at the emerging superpower for its role in cyber attacks against the U.S.
Plus, the latest on the economy and COVID-19.
What's your message to platforms like Facebook?
They're killing people. I mean, look, the only pandemic we have is among the unvaccinated. And they're killing people.
The White House frustrated over misinformation on the pandemic and the vaccine. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
And welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. The U.S. and other major world powers are joining forces in confronting China for malicious state-sponsored cyber attacks.
It is the largest condemnation of China's cyber activity to date, with NATO and the European Union also involved. CBN News national security correspondent Caitlin Burke has the latest on the move to expose China's tactics.
The accusation here is that China has been working with criminal hackers to profit from stolen sensitive government material. That includes intellectual property, as well as military, political, and economic information.
No country poses a broader, more severe intelligence collection threat than China.
Back in March, initial blame for a hack on Microsoft Exchange email servers went to a relatively unknown Chinese espionage network. Now, the U.S. and NATO allies point to evidence that those hackers worked directly with China's Ministry of State Security. Those countries also pledging to join forces to expose China's malicious cyber activities. Secretary of State Antony Blinken blasting the Chinese in a statement, writing, quote, "Responsible states do not indiscriminately compromise global network security, nor knowingly harbor cyber criminals, let alone sponsor or collaborate with them." Meanwhile, the Justice Department is charging 4 Chinese nationals in a hacking offensive targeting dozens of companies, universities, and government agencies. The indictment, made public Friday, revealing some disturbing details. Targeted industries included, among others, aviation, defense, education, government, healthcare, biopharmaceutical, and maritime. At research institutes and universities, the conspiracy targeted infectious disease research related to Ebola, MERS, HIV/AIDS, Marburg, and tularemia. U.S. intelligence agencies have released a cybersecurity advisory detailing tactics and techniques used by China to exploit networks. The hope is that exposing this information will help potential victims protect their systems. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. And joining us now from the North Lawn of the White House is our CBN News White House correspondent, Eric Phillips. Eric.
Well, Jenna, you heard what Caitlin just said. The White House is saying that speaking out against the cyber attack is step number one, and not just the U.S. speaking out, but NATO has released a statement strongly condemning the attack as well. The first time the organization has ever released a statement like that, according to White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. Now, during remarks this morning, the president was asked how he compared this latest attack from China to attacks that the United States received from criminals in Russia. And here's what the president had to say.
My understanding is that the Chinese government, not unlike the Russian government, is not doing this themselves, but are protecting those who are doing it, and maybe even accommodating them being able to do it. That may be the difference.
I would note that we are actually elevating and taking steps to not only speak out publicly, but certainly take action as it relates to problematic cyber activities from China in a different way, but as we have from Russia as well. We are not differentiating. One is, out of the realm of condemnation or out of the realm of consequence for the United States.
During this afternoon's press conference here at the White House, Jen Psaki was asked if the United States would be slower to impose sanctions on China than Russia because of the fact that the People's Republic of China contributes a great deal of money to the United States economy. And short, Psaki said no. The latest from the White House. John and Jenna, back to you.
All right, thank you, Eric. The first January 6th Capitol rioter to be convicted of a felony is sentenced to 8 months in prison. Police arrested Paul Allard Hodgkins of Tampa, Florida, more than a month after video footage showed him carrying a Trump flag on the Senate floor. He pleaded guilty to 1 count of obstructing an official proceeding, which carried a maximum of 20 years in prison. Hodgkins, who says he did not engage in any violence or property destruction, told the judge he regretted entering the Capitol and the hurt caused to the country he loves.
The Biden administration has transferred its first detainee out of Guantanamo Bay. Abdulatif Nasser, who's from Morocco, had been recommended for discharge back in 2016, but was kept at the wartime prison under President Trump. The Pentagon citing that Nasser's detention was no longer necessary to protect U.S. national security. Nasser arrived in Morocco today, where police took him into custody and said they would investigate him on suspicion of committing terrorist acts. Nasser was never charged at Guantanamo Bay.
Concerns over the Delta variant prompted falls in global stocks today. The Dow Jones slipped more than 800 points by midday, putting it on track for the worst daily drop since October. In Washington, President Biden was touting the U.S. economy. At a press conference, he highlighted new jobs and said forecasters predict GDP will grow by 7% this year, while also acknowledging the inflation many Americans are experiencing. He called it temporary, pointing out falling car and lumber prices. Biden added his infrastructure plan will keep the economic momentum going and help to ease shortages in national and global supply chains.
If we make prudent multi-year investments in better roads, bridges, transit systems, and high-speed internet, in a modern, resilient electric grid, here's what will happen. It breaks up the bottlenecks in our economy.
Biden labels his plan a blue-collar blueprint for rebuilding the economy, creating jobs, raising wages, and keeping prices in check.
Congressional Republicans have until Wednesday to hash out a bipartisan deal on infrastructure. That's the day it goes up for a vote in the Senate. Republicans are crying foul on the deadline put in place by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, insisting it's more important to get it right than to meet an arbitrary deadline. Senator Rob Portman says negotiations are ongoing.
It's actually 11 Republicans and 11 Democrats putting this together. Chuck Schumer, with all due respect, is not writing the bill, nor is Mitch McConnell, by the way. So that's why we shouldn't have an arbitrary deadline of Wednesday. We should bring the legislation forward when it's ready.
After negotiators dropped a plan to ramp up tax enforcement because of Republican pushback, the group continues to work out how to pay for the bill, now totaling $1.2 trillion over 8 years.
President Biden vowing that the Justice Department will appeal a federal judge's ruling that deems the DACA program illegal. Immigrants whose parents brought them into the United States illegally as children were afforded legal protections under the program, but Texas and 8 other states sued to halt it, arguing former President Obama lacked the power to create the program when he bypassed Congress. The ruling leaves the program in place for existing Dreamers, but stops the government from approving new applications. Biden called the judge's decision deeply disappointing and is renewing calls for Congress to create a permanent solution.
And joining us now is Nathan Gonzalez, editor and publisher of Inside Elections. Nathan, good to have you with us this Monday. So in his ruling, the judge acknowledged widespread sympathy for Dreamers and wrote, quote, that the court might agree with the sentiments. Meanwhile, the DACA program has broad public support even among Republicans. Why doesn't that correspond to Capitol Hill when it comes to actually passing legislation to protect Dreamers?
Well, because everything is difficult on Capitol Hill. I mean, we have a divided Congress, a 50-50 Senate, and a very narrowly divided House of Representatives, and we have a divided country. And so nothing is easy. You talked about a budget, just getting a budget passed is difficult. And so now we're talking about DACA and immigration in general, which is one of the most polarizing issues, or one of the issues that I think defines the two parties in terms of how many people should be coming in, what should we do with people who are already in the country. And so it's just one of the hottest topics we have.
Nathan, where we typically see consensus is on infrastructure. This week, 2 infrastructure votes are scheduled in the Senate. Politico's out describing Chuck Schumer's move as playing hardball, trying to put pressure on Republicans who say they want a bipartisan deal, and to signal he expects all 50 Democrats to fall in line. Nathan, is this the week that Biden's hope on infrastructure potentially blows up?
Well, I think we've been talking about infrastructure for years now. But what we have to remember is that in Washington, if you have the votes, you vote. If you don't have the votes, then you talk and debate and try to debate until you have enough votes. So I think, while Leader Schumer might be trying to play hardball, if he had the votes today, there would be a vote. But the bill's not done, and we're still waiting. Ultimately, I'm skeptical that a big bill is going to get passed because you have one of the dynamics we have to remember is that you have so few senators who represent states that the opposing party's presidential candidate won. You only have 6 senators who, the opposite presidential nominee won their state. So there's just very little political pressure to compromise or work with the other side, and that leaves us in a stalemate.
Yeah, we'll see with some of the moderates. I know Kristen Sinema was surprised by this Wednesday deadline. Axios is reporting Democrats in the South, the Midwest, and in the Rockies are running against the party's image and messaging, eyeing these midterm campaigns. Nathan, how warranted are their concerns, and does it acknowledge a potential red wave we could see sweep Washington in 2022?
Well, there's certainly Democrats that are concerned about the big D Democratic losses in rural America in 2020. A couple of longtime Democratic members of the House lost, such as Colin Peterson in Minnesota, who represent a very rural district. So it's a concern for Democrats, and there's optimism for Republicans. But on the flip side, about 80% of the U.S. population lives in urban areas. So Republicans, it looks like they are making gains in rural America, but they're also making gains with a smaller segment of the population. And so looking forward to the next elections, Republicans should continue to be concerned about those losses in the suburban areas and trying to regain some ground there.
Nathan, you're talking about looking forward to the next elections. If I can get you to talk about last elections, a new study out today looked at last year's public polling and found that national results were off by the greatest margin in 40 years, overstating Democratic support across the board. Nathan, why the dramatic disconnect in numbers, and what does that mean going forward?
Well, I think a challenge for pollsters is are the people that are getting on the phone and answering these long questionnaires, are they representative of the population at large? And it's clear that there are some challenges. I continue to believe that polling is an imperfect but useful way to look at elections. And I think when we take a step back and look at what the polling was telling us prior to the 2020 elections, it was telling us that Biden had a better chance of being elected president, and he won. It told us that Senate Democrats had a better chance of winning control than Republicans, and they did that. Right. It showed us that there was a better chance that Democrats were going to maintain control of the House, and they did. Now, there were some misses along the way, particularly in individual House races, but I don't think it's a completely flawed. Polling is not completely flawed that we just throw it all away and ignore it all.
Imperfect but useful. Nathan Gonzalez with Inside Elections, thank you so much for your time and expertise today.
Thank you. See you next time.
And coming up, a new page in the sex abuse scandals plaguing the Catholic Church after powerful Vatican officials dismissed warnings.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
And welcome back. Exclusive reporting tonight from the Washington Post reveals how powerful officials in the Catholic Church helped a teen accused of abuse become a priest. Top Vatican officials dismissed accusations that an Italian priest sexually molested a fellow altar boy when both were teenagers. A cardinal and a bishop both called those claims calumny and helped Father Gabriele Martinelli become a priest. The Vatican is now revisiting the case, putting Martinelli on trial. The Washington Post, based on interviews and a review of thousands of previously unreported documents, portrays a Catholic Church cover-up and a failure to conduct credible investigations.
And joining us now from Bari, Italy, is Chico Harlan, the Rome bureau chief for the Washington Post. Chico, thank you for being with us tonight, and a big story that you broke here. First off, how did you uncover this story?
Well, there had been previous reporting on this 4 years ago from several Italian outlets. Prior to that reporting, Martinelli had already turned from an altar boy into a priest with no public awareness of the accusations that had been made against him when he was a teenager. And so that reporting broke this story into the open, and they did imply that there was a cover-up among officials in the Vatican. What we did was take that to a much deeper level, like a crash report after an airplane goes down, and look at every little thing behind the scenes. So you're not just saying, oh, they covered it up, but you're looking at every step and the thinking of the bishops and the cardinals who were dealing with this, trying to get at why they failed. So that was the effort of this story, and it was made possible by the access that we had to, as you mentioned, thousands of papers, court records, and in police interviews that have happened now that this case has made its way through the Vatican and also through court proceedings in Rome. You have kind of a situation that might strike Americans as double jeopardy, where both the legal entities of the city-state of the Vatican and of Italy are looking at this at the moment. So we have access to records of both of those.
Chico, it seems a little bit counterintuitive, but with the sex abuse scandal that has been plaguing the Catholic Church, why did these top Vatican officials dismiss the allegations?
Well, this case spanned several years, and I guess you're starting in right around the time that Pope Francis became pontiff. At the time, we were well into the abuse scandal. The Boston cases had been well documented at that point, and most of America knew very well about the scale of the problem. But there's kind of a secondary issue that has emerged as a crisis for the church, I think, during Francis's tenure, which is the difficulty not just of handling allegations against particular priests, but the difficulty of making sure that the powerful people in the church, bishops and cardinals, respond appropriately. And at least until a few years ago, there had been very little effort made by the church in any country, including America, but surely in the Vatican city-state itself, to provide checks and balances on these princes of the church to ensure that they handled things well. In the case that we document, there was very little oversight of these individuals, bishops and cardinals. They're answerable only to the Pope, and they were able to run an investigation that was pretty laughable.
Chico, just about 30 seconds left here, but how is this all playing in the Italian media?
I don't think that many have picked up on it based on our reporting, and I anticipate that more people will revisit it soon because this case is going to bubble up again. The Vatican recently announced that the verdict in this case featuring now priest Gabriele Martinelli, will come out on October 6th. And at that point, the most definitive account of what's happened is ours.
All right, Chico, unfortunately, we are out of time. Chico Harlan with the Washington Post, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you so much for breaking the story.
Sure, thank you very much.
And coming up, coronavirus cases are on the rise across the country. Why it's sparking the blame game between big tech and the Biden White House.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Well, the Tokyo Olympics are just days away, and an alternate on the U.S. women's gymnastics team has tested positive for the coronavirus. The vaccinated 18-year-old is now isolating in a hotel, and another alternate athlete in close contact is in quarantine, too.
The Olympic cases come amid a coronavirus surge, and as health officials acknowledge, nearly every state is seeing increases. The Biden administration blames social media for falling short of its vaccination goal. However, the finger-pointing has some asking, how far should the government go to get more Americans vaccinated? CBN's Del Hurd has the story.
The White House is frustrated that what it calls misinformation on social media is preventing people from getting vaccinated, and it wants the misinformation stopped.
What's your message to platforms like Facebook?
They're killing people. I mean, it really, look, the only pandemic we have is among the unvaccinated, and they're killing people.
Facebook refuted the claim, saying vaccinations are up, but health officials say it's an urgent issue with a new rise in COVID cases in most states, fueled by the Delta variant.
This Delta virus is really a cause of greater concern. This is not last year's virus.
More than 65% of Americans 12 and over have received at least one dose of the vaccine. But the White House believes social media platforms that allow posts attacking the vaccine are keeping millions of other Americans from being vaccinated.
I've been deeply concerned about the flow of misinformation across technology platforms and throughout society over the last many months.
And a firestorm erupted in Washington last week when White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the White House is in regular contact with Facebook about flagging posts seen as problematic, which led a White House reporter to ask,
for how long has the administration been spying on people's Facebook
profiles looking for vaccine misinformation?
Well, that was quite a loaded and inaccurate question.
But Texas Senator Ted Cruz accused the Biden administration of colluding with big tech.
It makes clear that everything we thought about the Biden administration, about their willingness to trample on free speech, to trample on the Constitution, to use government power to silence you, everything we feared they might do, they are doing, and worse.
COVID cases are up in all but 2 states in the U.S. Officials in Los Angeles County are even reinstituting an indoor mask mandate, but the sheriff says he won't enforce it. Among the latest cases are 5 of the Texas Democrats who fled to D.C. to block a vote on election reform. They met with Vice President Kamala Harris last week. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Still ahead, red-hot chili peppers in space. The secret garden on board the International Space Station.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Finally tonight, astronauts on board the International Space Station are spicing things up with a new addition to their orbital garden.
Jenna, you're making me hungry. Astronaut Shane Kimbrough planted 48 red and green chili pepper seeds in the advanced plant habitat on board the spacecraft. Growing peppers will be one of the longest and most challenging experiments in the lab, which is about the size of, get this, a kitchen oven. The lab is also controlled by the Kennedy Space Center. Astronauts will be able to harvest the peppers in about 3 months, and whatever they don't eat will be sent back down to Earth for analysis, and I guess not for eating, Jenna.
Gabe, our producer, said these peppers are out of this world.
Ah, it's a good dad joke. I love it.
Determined. Have a great evening.